Filmmakers, we are back for another episode of The Straight Shooters. That's where we talk about something that we're interested in, like movies or books or whatever, and we give you our honest opinion about what it is that we're talking about. As you notice, this week we don't have any guests. Why? Because, well,
we don't have to.
We don't have to. This is our show. We can do whatever we want. My name is Todd Braley.
And my name is Itai.
And we are independent filmmakers and lovers of all things entertainment. So this episode, we are going to be talking about the gem that is Burt Reynolds' Sharky's Machine. Yes, you can see it back there, you can see it there, and you can see it over here. That's the album. Yeah, we're just gonna go Sharky crazy this week. So when I brought this up to you, Itai, I said, "Hey man, we should talk about Sharky's Machine," and you went, I don't think I recall seeing you get that excited to talk about something.
Oh, because it's not your sort of regular. It's a bit more obscure, I guess, for a lot of people. Not everybody knows about this one,
right?
And as soon as you mentioned it, I was like, oh, of course, I have it in my collection. It's time. Nice. It's time for a rewatch anyway. Nice. So yeah. Mind you, I don't have as much of Sharky's Machine as you do. I just have the DVD. For me, it's more than enough. I'm less of a collector, but it's still amazing looking at all the different versions and the stuff you've got there.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun getting everything together for this episode. So it was like I dug out my original DVD version. I didn't have. I don't know what happened to my VHS. I used to have the VHS of it, but I think it came when I had a garage sale, and I was trying to. Well, yeah, pretty much. I mean, you know how bulky those things get. And it's funny now that, my daughter is, she collects records and VHS tapes now. So I'm sitting there thinking,
VHS tapes, the some of the rare ones now are worth a fortune. So
yeah, I'm finding that out. So I have an original Jaws, VHS, one of the original one that I had, I broke because I watched it so much. And then the version that I have now actually has the Jaws poster on the cover. It's backwards. The woman, because usually I wouldn't be surprised if you had Richard Dreyfuss in some room in your house, the actual Richard Dreyfuss. Shh. Yeah.
Don't
tell anybody. He's been missing for 6 months. So we're going to talk about Sharky's Machine, and the movie. I'll just start off by just saying it's absolutely one of my favorite films. I've watched it in getting ready for this episode. I watched it last night, and then I watched it again today while I was editing some real estate photos. And I don't know. It's just one of those movies I just don't get tired of. I mean, with the cast that is in that film, I mean, obviously Burt Reynolds was the star of it, but then he also directed it. Then you had the absolutely gorgeous hot chick and star of the Thornbirds, Miss Rachel Ward. Oh my God. Okay. We had Charles Durning, who was in Tootsie, and he was in Dune. Oh. Or no, he wasn't in Dune.
Stuff. Yeah.
He was not
in Dune, but he was in a ton of stuff.
He's just been in a ton of stuff. Brian Keith, who was better known for the television show, what was it, Family Affair? I think it was.
I'm not sure, but for me, he was a lot of Westerns, actually. I saw him in when I was little. He was a bit of a favorite.
Well, he was in a lot of Burt Reynolds movies. He was in Sharky's Machine. Brian Keith, let me see, he was also in Hooper, and a handful of other ones as well. We're not aging ourselves at all.
I think actually that Burt Reynold said that when he was casting for this film, he was sort of trying to find the right actors, and he wanted Brian Keith. And once he got Brian Keith, it was easy to get everybody else because they just jumped on board. He just had, Brian Keith had that sort of reputation. People wanted to work with him. So, yeah.
Yeah, there was nothing about this movie that sucked. I mean,
also
literally.
Earl Holliman and Bernie Casey.
Yep. Bernie Casey. Well, and a lot of people that don't know, that want to look back at Bernie Casey. I mean, you can go back to, believe it or not,
a lot of people will know his face.
Revenge of the Nerds. He's in that. God, what else?
A big man.
He's
massive
huge. Dude was crazy huge.
If you pay attention in Sharky's, you can see how much bigger he is than other people.
Yeah, well, he was an NFL star too. To see that's something that maybe some people didn't know. He played for the NFL for a few years, and then so he's done a lot of stuff. Then you had Vittorio Gassman. He had been around. He had done a lot of stuff in the 40s and 50s. Again, Henry Silva, Earl Holliman.
One of my favorites. I love Henry Silva.
Yeah, he's awesome. He did
He was in these a ton of B-grade European action, thrillers. Oh my God, so good.
Yeah, well, wasn't he in a couple of Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns as well?
Yeah, but maybe not in massive roles, but he was also in a lot of sort of Franco Nero films, and just that sort of European action thrillers, of the probably late 70s and mid 70s, late 70s, and 80s. But and then you had a great face,
Earl Holliman, who was on Police Story with Angie Dickinson, and John Fiedler, who's done a ton of stuff, but you will all know him as the voice of Piglet in the Disney Winnie the Pooh movie. Well, he also did that, and then he did a lot of voiceover work for Disney. Joseph Mascalo, who is notoriously known for being on the daytime soap opera Days of Our Lives forever. The dude was on there. Oh my! Is
Days of Our Lives still going?
Yes, Days of Our Lives is the last soap opera, and it is still on television. So
I've never seen an episode.
Well, I actually met Joseph Mascalo. I got his autograph and quite a few. Yeah, okay. Well, that's another show for a whole nother time. And then Susie Pye, who was the damsel in distress in Big Trouble in Little China. You'll remember her from that.
Oh God, I love that movie.
And it was just a ton of people, and even the gentleman who wrote the book, William Deal, he was in it. He plays Percy Sinclair, the pimp, the big time pimp.
Of course.
So he was in that, and the list just goes on and on. The amount of people that were in this. Just go on IMDb and look up Sharky's Machine cast.
Well, there's one actor that I think is worth mentioning, because I think that he is potentially put forth the best performance in this film, and that's Richard Libertini, the one who plays Nosh.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I don't know. I think I skipped over him by accident.
Yeah. Such a natural actor, just the performance. I remember it was just so.
Well,
one of my beefs with the film also has to do with him, but yeah.
Well,
but he was great.
And he was also in. Did he? No, he wasn't in Cannonball Run. I forgot. He was in a couple other things, but he actually played an Arab character. I can't remember the name of the movie. Let me see if I can.
But he was in a ton of stuff.
He was
a lot of maybe TV stuff of late.
Yeah, he did.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, he did a lot of stuff. So,
because he was in like Dolphin Tale, and he appeared in an episode of Supernatural. Supernatural was one of my favorite shows. But he's got a long list. He was like on Monk and Drew Carey show, going back.
He was in The In-Laws with Peter Falk and Alan Arkin. He was in Popeye. He was in Fletch. He was on the TV show Monk. He was on the Drew Carey show, Nash Bridges.
He's made a lot of
Columbo,
sort of small appearances. Yeah.
So yeah,
but he's one of those faces that you recognize,
yeah, exactly. He's like, I don't know who that is, but I've seen him before, kind of guy.
Yeah, Bonfire of the Vanities, Awakenings. He was in, some fairly biggish stuff. So yeah.
So
I think he was in both Fletchers, wasn't he? Fletch and Fletch.
I think so. I think he was.
Yeah.
But so the whole idea behind Sharky's Machine came from a book, once again by William Deal, and I'll just repeat that he gave us the book Primal Fear, which had Edward Norton and Richard Gere in a few years later. But the book was written in 1978, and they did the adaptation of it. Warner Brothers bought the rights to it, and between Warner Brothers and
I think it was Orion.
Well,
Orion
Warner Brothers helped distribute it that was initially, and then Orion was the what do you call it? The actual distributor. Warner Brothers was the studio. They put the money up, and then Orion did the distribution. So,
as far as the deal goes, I read that he was broke when he wrote the book, the novel, and that whole thing with the studios picking it up just was a bit of a lifeline for him. I think it was like $400,000 that the rights were sold for.
That's a lot of money when you're broke.
Pretty good.
Well, I think probably back they probably bought it in 1979, which is weird because, if the book, being that the book wasn't super popular when it came out, it's kind of surprising that they paid that much money for it. So,
yeah, I'm not sure all of it went to him because I know it was initially he got like a publishing deal for like, I don't know, $160,000 to actually either write it or to distribute the book itself.
It's Ballantine.
This was for the film.
So yeah. So then Burt Reynolds, I guess, had read the book and decided that he wanted to scoop it up or be able to do the film himself, and back then Burt Reynolds was still huge. I mean, it seemed like Burt Reynolds was huge forever. It seemed like he was huge until after the Hot in the Shade show, where he kind of lost a lot of his luster because of his supposed affair with somebody outside of Lonnie Anderson, who he was married to. But I don't know, man. I never stopped liking Burt Reynolds. I always thought he was awesome at anything he does, anything he did. It was, I loved all the Gator films and the Smokey and the Bandit movies, the Cannonball Run movies, Longest Yard, just run down the list.
I love The Longest Yard.
Yeah.
Love The Longest Yard.
Yep.
That was great. But
Deliverance, of course.
This was a few years after Deliverance. And I think the deal with Burt Reynolds in this film, I think he read the either the book or the script or both.
Burt Reynolds had actually read the book, and then had found out that they had the rights, that Warner Brothers had the rights to it, and kind of dove in at that point. So,
yeah, there was a story. He basically said that when he read it, it reminded him of his favorite film, which was Laura from 1944, a film starring Clifton Webb and Vincent Price.
Oh, okay.
I believe.
Okay.
But it was sort of this noir film, and I think he probably always wanted to make some kind of a neo-noir type of thing. And Burt Reynolds was very well known for mostly for comedy, and when it wasn't comedy, he was always like this cheeky, sexy, kind of character. And I think he wanted to go dark. He wanted to go darker to show what he can do, and he found this script to be potentially the way to go there. He already had ideas and visions as to how this film should look,
right?
But apparently he wasn't meant to direct originally. He tried to get John Boorman to direct.
Oh, wow.
After they worked together on Deliverance. And Boorman was just, I think, scheduling conflicts and stuff, like couldn't do it. And he actually said to Burt Reynolds, if you're that passionate about this project, why don't you just direct it? Because Burt Reynolds already directed Gator and another one before that. This was his third film as director.
Right.
So he thought, what the hell, I'll do it. So yeah, started casting, and the rest sort of all fell into place.
Yeah,
pretty quickly.
So the whole idea behind this, spoilers coming. So if you haven't seen the movie, pause us right now.
Yeah, everybody dies in the end.
There, and then unpause us, and because basically the movie was just about Burt Reynolds' character Sharky. I don't recall, did they ever, he doesn't have a last name in the movie, does he? They just call him Sharky.
I think Sharky is his last name, I think.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, because they say what his first name is, Tommy.
Yeah.
When they're,
that's right. It was when he etched it into the side of the drawer or whatever it was.
Is that your name, Tommy? No, it's Ralph. We just use Tommy just to confuse them.
That's when he takes Domino into hiding in his childhood home. Yeah.
Yep. So he's an Atlanta detective, and he falls in love with a high-class hooker, and who happens to be linked to a mob boss who's got his hands in politics and drugs and selling little girls, and that's it kind of goes the other way. They start what's the word? Recording her and following her to get to this mob boss, and that's one of the beautiful things about this movie, is that he falls in love with her without ever having met her, right?
And
right.
They show it
just from watching her.
And they show it really, really like well in this one. That's one of the really nice touches in this film. And again, I think Burt Reynolds is great, in convincing us that it's happening. Just by watching her through the lens, he talks to her, she sings, he sings with her, that kind of thing. But it's not tacky.
No,
it's all done very well.
Well, that's the beauty of this movie, is like everything in it is done with a sense of class to it. The only time it gets, where the class kind of drops away from it is, when his buddy Nosh keeps talking about the women that they dated when they were younger. Remember Rosalie D'Amato? She had this same kind of boobs, same big boobs. He says, I never nailed her though. Did you?
Did you?
I mean, come on. A lot of time's gone. This is how many times I've seen this movie. Come on, a lot of time's gone by. You know,
I won't be mad. I won't be mad. Just tell me.
Just tell me. Yeah, I did. Son of a bitch! Oh shit! I knew you did.
Always do that.
You always did that. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. The dialogue in this is classic Reynolds. You know, I mean, classic Burt Reynolds. Just because. You know, you can tell the kind of stuff that was injected by him or even the other actors just because of their ability to do improv. And it's just one of those movies that as you're watching it, I mean, I remember seeing it, you know, the first time I saw it in the theater, it was one of those things that there was so much laughter going on that you missed like the next, you know, 3 or 4 sentences of dialogue because everybody was in hysterics laughing so hard at some of the things that were being said. And that was just, you know, that's
finally,
one of the, go ahead.
Just with regard to the comedy part, that was actually one of the criticisms put forth by some critics at the time. And I can't remember which one of them it was. It was either Siskel or Ebert, I think. And they actually said that that the film kind of drops into that comedy style in some points that it didn't need to. So they actually used that as a criticism, whereas for the audience, this was obviously, you know, a big plus to have some comic relief in, you know, in certain parts. It's not like it's comedy throughout.
No,
but a lot of the male, you know, exchanges between, you know, these detectives and it's
well,
I'm not sure. I can understand both points of view, but yeah, for me that was pretty good.
I don't know. To me, I felt like because of the kind of story it was, you needed to have that. You know, it's kind of like Lethal Weapon. You know, you have those moments of comedy that that you are really it's the stuff that's needed. You know, and I think that is kind of what really makes this movie, is because it's got its serious part, it's got its dark parts, and the comedy comes in. And it's not like, you know, there's 3 scenes of comedy. It's like sometimes it's just little injections, you know, like Brian Keith and Bernie Casey watching Domino while Burt Reynolds is taking a shower, and he has this conversation because Bernie Casey is very into like Asian what's the word I'm looking for? He eats a lot of Chinese food. He doesn't, he believes in Zen. He does, you know, he's kind of one of those guys that is just kind of all about the metaphysical things. And Brian Keith is not.
He's a detective that goes home to a bottle of whiskey kind of thing.
Exactly. You know, and drinks himself into a coma and then wakes up the next day and goes back to work. And
does it all over again.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just the exchanges, you know. He says, "You're going to tell me some more of that Zen shit," you know. So yeah, I'm not doing it any justice right now, but the comedy in it it all has its place. I guess is what I'm trying to say. That it's just not thrown in to be thrown in. It's there for a reason, and it's always at really good points. You know, like the first time after Sharky gets demoted from narcotics to vice, he goes out with Brian Keith and Bernie Casey's characters, and they're going on a prostitute hunt, trying to arrest people. How did Brian Keith put it? We are out here looking to arrest certain individuals that would be performing sex acts for money. And they see Mabel, who is one of their regulars that they drag in, and they send Burt Reynolds out to go to go get her.
Because she already knows what they look like.
Yeah, and
she already knows them.
It's like, what? She already knows us. So they send Burt Reynolds out, and there's a guy she's talking to who said, $50, honey, I wouldn't give you $50 to do anything. And Burt Reynolds is standing there and he goes, I would. And he goes, hey, she's all yours. And she goes, oh, the man with the smiling eyes. And then he raises his badge, Sharky.
And the badge.
Narcotics. Yeah. I mean, Vice. You fucking low life creep. And then she hits him with her purse. And he's taking her back to the car, and she says, she says something. She calls him a Nazi bastard, and then she goes, I hope your prick withers and falls off. Oh, I hope your prick withers and falls off, you Nazi bastard. So it's just continuous things like that, and sometimes they're just a couple of pieces of dialogue that just really kick that whole comedy thing in, and it's the mix, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. I took the long road to get to it, but the mix of the action and the drama and the darkness and the comedy, in my opinion, is perfect. I mean, I don't know about you, Itai. I just felt like it was a perfect mix.
We talked about the film before, and I said it's one of my favorite films, but I don't see it as a perfect film, in many ways. And one of the criticisms by a lot of critics, which is also, it follows on kind of from that comedy criticism that I mentioned before, is that the film suffers from having sort of a lot of elements as far as sort of subgenres, and it doesn't end up knowing, what it wants to be. And in some way, I do agree with that, and in others, I don't, because I believe it does work. But I did notice it. Let's put it that way. I did notice that there are stretches that it follows on, the romance, which was really, really great. And I thought they should have had more of it.
Right.
Even though I prefer the thriller. But the film starts off, even the credits at the beginning, it's gritty. It's dark. You can tell it's going a certain way. His character, you just see him walking, and you can already see certain things about him. You can already guess. Right. Some.
He's got a beard. He's got this gnarly beard, which is something back then you didn't see Burt Reynolds in. You never saw him with a beard. He almost always had a mustache, but at the beginning of the film, he's got this gnarly beard, and he
looks unkempt, basically.
Yes, very much.
And then, he has this sort of like an undercover sort of drug deal that gets botched and all the rest of it. But you get a feeling of, we're going to get a different Burt Reynolds here. Yeah. And then it goes into old Burt Reynolds, and then it comes back into this one we haven't seen. And then again, the old Burt Reynolds. And I thought that if they would have kept it consistently dark, it would probably have made a better film. But the comedy made me laugh. I thought it was fun in parts. So it's a choice, that he made as director and all the rest of it. And I'm not going to argue it in a way to say, well, am I a better director than Burt Reynolds? I'm not going to go there. So you know what I mean? It's like, it's a choice. Directors make choices, and that's the kind of film that he wanted to make. Right. I would have preferred to see it more in the dark and to concentrate more on that whole relationship between Sharky and Domino and how it comes to be. Certain things happened a little too quickly to serve the film, and I get that. And the one thing that I thought was very gutsy as far as the direction of this film is that it doesn't show us everything. there are certain bits it just cuts off and it just lets you. And I think we talked about it earlier.
Use
I'm
your
not
brain.
sure if this was, if I'm not sure if it was a choice or if they, botched some of the footage or whatever. But in some parts, it just kind of cuts off and lets you work it out by yourself, and it doesn't even come back to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
so again, spoiler alert, but there are certain characters that we get that sort of hint that they're about to die or may have died, but we're not told. And then again, sometimes it is mentioned later, in other times it's not.
Well, and it's like for me, something that comes into play and then kind of disappears is the whole Percy the Wonder Pimp. When they put the that prostitute Mabel, excuse me, when they bring her in, and then she starts talking smack, but we don't know why he's there. We don't even ever see him again. So
that was a fault, I think. But you get a hint that he's going to be some kind of menacing character.
Well,
and then
you think he is. Back. Yeah, they never show him again. So that was probably for me
a strange scene.
One of those weird ones where you almost wish they just had left that part out.
Absolutely, it was unnecessary because we think she's going to turn up dead first of all,
right?
The way the detectives all looked at each other like what's going on here? What's the deal with this guy?
Right.
And then they never go back to him. So
well, and they were talking. When Burt Reynolds asked who he was, he says Percy Sinclair, a big big time pimp, but we have no idea why he's there because he's talking to Derming.
Charles Durning.
Durning's character, and they're exchanging what looks like kind of a friendly exchange of words about something because they're just, you see them talking, you don't really hear anything. And then Sinclair leaves after he almost looks like he's going to kill this prostitute Mabel.
He bangs the cage on the way out.
Yeah, bangs the cage, but they still have his wallet. They have his little black book, all this stuff, but he's not the pimp. It's the Victor character. That was the only thing.
Victor is more than a pimp. Is not you mean that, like,
right? Yeah. But he's the one in charge of Domino and all of these other high-end prostitutes. And so it was just kind of one of those things. It was literally like,
well, in my mind, I believe there's two reasons that scene existed and that the character existed. And one you've already mentioned before, because who played him?
William Deal, the author of the book.
Exactly. So the novelty factor, as far as having, the actual author appear in the film, that was one of the reasons for that scene. And the other one was the wallet that had the names of the prostitutes, and Sharky worked out that the names are actually phone numbers. Right. That was the way of getting, all the phone taps and how the whole thing got started. Right. Right. So, but it's definitely a clunky way to do it. Right. And it was unnecessary to have that whole scene. They could have made it, done it a different way, and not have that whole scene. Right. And then not have that character go anywhere, which was very strange. Yeah. But yeah, I also thought that Charles Durning's character was, as much as I love him, it was over. It was way over. He was always shouting, and it's like, we got it the first and second and third time. They didn't need to keep pounding us on the head with it.
Well,
and it also made his performance look. And I love him, so I don't know why that was.
Well, it's kind of one of those things that I don't know. Being a filmmaker, there's a lot of questions that I have, but then at the same time, when in regards to this movie, I don't care. I get it, and there are places, that you're talking about that it's clunky, but then at the same time, it's like, oh well.
but that's what I'm saying. It's a very, in many ways, if you analyze it and take it apart, it's a very imperfect film, but it's highly entertaining, and again, so many favorite actors in it, and the feel of it, and it makes up for the faults. That's how I see it. I'll give you another one, for example, that I thought was very odd. I understand the choice of the time, and that's those two ninjas that they have there. It made absolutely no sense. It was never explained why those two assassins were sort of ninjas. It just made it wasn't connected to the story in any way whatsoever. They didn't explain where he found them, why they were there, but it was just to show some martial arts, really.
Because
they come and they go.
Yeah, well, they go because, pew pew.
Yeah. One with one of those what are they, shotguns or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah. Or
he gets him on the boat.
Spear gun. He actually he shot one. He shot the first one after they cut his fingers off.
With Smiley's gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they cut two of his fingers off in probably one of the most painful to watch scenes in a film ever, because Burt Reynolds looks like he is in excruciating pain because they cut his fingers off because they're trying to get him to tell them where Domino is being kept.
Killed, yeah.
And Burt Reynolds won't give in. Well, one of the ninjas takes one of those really cool, what kind of knives you call those? Those ones that the handles whip around.
Some kind of a flick knife, yeah.
Yeah, so boom, butterfly, and then brings it down right in between these two fingers, and then he cuts it off right at the knuckle. And come on, Sharky, come on, that's gotta hurt. You want to go for two?
Yeah, he's asking. No, but he's asking Sharky to scream or to yell, to let it out, because Sharky's not making much of a sound, and that even made it more painful. Yeah,
and just the sweat that is dripping off of Burt Reynolds' face during that scene, man. It is just, oh God.
What did he say? He says to him, "We're in the middle of the ocean. Nobody's going to hear you here. You can scream. Feel free to scream.
Yeah, scream. Yeah. Go ahead. Make some noise. Nobody's going to hear you."
But yeah, that was a painful scene. I remember that one very well.
He cuts off both his pinky finger and I don't know which one this is called, but the ring finger, I guess. And
the ring finger.
They cut those two fingers off, and then when Burt Reynolds, he finally convinces Burt Reynolds to tell him where Domino is, you see his hand pull away. I think it was on his left hand. You see his hand pull away, and the fingers were left on the table. So you just see those fingers as he's pulling. Oh my God, that is just like the most god-awful, painful thing to watch. And I still, doesn't matter how many times I've seen this movie, because I've seen it multiple times. I mean, probably in the couple 300s at least. And it's still painful as hell to watch.
And he doesn't talk.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. No, he sends Smiley to that big police station in the sky. or in the ground.
But
wherever.
it's like the intensity of the whole finger cutting scene was to show us that they could have cut all his fingers off. He wouldn't have told, and that's one of the things about Sharky. So yeah, that was a good one.
That's one of the more. That's one of the probably. I don't know. I kind of feel like that's one of the darker scenes. If you had two dark scenes in that movie, that would be one of them. And the other one, I kind of feel would be when they killed Tad Roper and the Asian hooker towards the beginning of the movie. That was pretty dark because
you felt her terror.
Yes, yeah, she was scared, like she was just really really terrified because you could just see her shaking,
and she was trying not to look at him, hoping he will keep her alive. It was all very subtle. They didn't over explain it again, which was nice, because at one point I thought, is she blind, the way she kind of looked, but she tried to look away from him, so that perhaps he would spare her life. And of course he goes and shows himself and blows her head off. But and there was also a fault, I thought, with that scene.
The body?
More to do with sound. He had a silencer on, and the sound was no silencer. The sound effect of the shot was without a silencer, and I was like, why would you do that? You're showing us a silencer. He kills them both in the middle of some party. And why you're giving me, sounds of a gun going off with no silencer?
Well,
okay, whatever.
I don't know how much you know about firearms, but there is no such thing as a silencer. There is the silencer is a Hollywood gimmick. There are sound suppressors.
Correct.
But
that's what they call them. They call them silencer.
But their sound,
they muffle a shot.
They sound more like they did in Sharky's Machine than they do when you hear them in other movies, when they're supposed to be quiet, when they're supposed to be sneaking around.
I get it, but the thing was, in that one, it was like they give you the sound of a gunshot with one that echoes, and that's what a suppressor does. It sort of it cuts off that echo. And it's very, very different. And when I heard it, I was like, okay, well, what's the point of having one on if if the sound is going to be so loud and echoey,
right?
Why include it?
Right.
But again, that was just a little thing. I wasn't really bothered by it that much.
Right.
I just kind of picked it and I moved on.
Gotcha. The one for me in that same scene was the guy that was laying on the bed, his body. It was his upper half, because you could tell as soon as they cut to that wide shot, because they were on a spinning bed. And as he came around, Henry Silva shot him in the chest. And you just look, because just previous to that, he was kind of squirming because she was rubbing, kind of nasty, but rubbing oil on his body and stuff. And then when they cut to him, he's like kind of moving and squirming and, oh wow, yeah, baby, that feels good kind of thing. And then they cut to him and he's laying there and he's got his hands on his stomach.
Yeah.
And he's not moving. He's just like this. And then Henry Silva shoots him in the chest. And it's literally, there's no like passage of time or anything. It's supposed to be that moment. And you looked at the upper half of the guy's body and you go, okay, well, that's fake. I mean, I said that when I watched it. It was kind of like, I looked at that and I went, oh, wow, that's fake. Okay. Moving on. So
moving on. Yeah, it's exactly what I'm talking about. It's choices, and they made some choices that I would have made completely differently. Also, if you shoot someone from that close a range, why would you shoot them in the chest? Why don't you just shoot him in the head?
Right. Right.
Because that's how he shot her. He shot her in the head.
Right.
And it's like, explain. but they kind of do explain in a way, because Henry Silva's character is so all over the place. He's a ghost, and he's very tough to see and to catch and to find and all the rest of it. But he is very, very scattered at the same time, because he's such a tweaker. He's like a drug addict. Which was the only thing that kept him going at one point. But
well, that was kind of one of the things I liked about his character, that he was just upside down. And that was kind of the first time I recall ever seeing a bad guy with a drug problem like that. They're a dime a dozen now, but back then, bad guys, the mob guys, they weren't the tweakers. They weren't they were all the guys, especially in a movie like this, where they're supposed to, the class issue, because then you find out he's Victor's younger brother. And so I don't know, for me, I like the fact that he, before he killed somebody outside. The one thing I thought was kind of weird is when he killed the prostitute at the beginning, when he shot her in the head after he killed the cop. He said something in Italian, and I wish I could repeat it, but my dyslexia at this point won't let me. But he said that, and then he shot her. But everybody else, when he shot them, like when he thought he's shooting Domino in front of the door, he steps in front of the door, holds the gun up against the door, and goes, "Ah!" Boom, and then pulls the trigger. He does that a couple different times, where he's does this like primordial scream before he pulls the trigger on his gun. And I was like, I thought it was cool, but after I saw it like the fourth time, I'm like, wait a minute, how come he didn't scream when he shot the prostitute?
Yeah,
because
you got to feel that this was he's almost like a ritual, and then and then they show you he doesn't do it. I can't remember where the two brothers came from, but it kind of hints at a backstory with him, that wherever they came from, over there he wasn't a drug addict. He was this highly, trained assassin. Yeah. And then when they came to the US, the new move to a new culture kind of ruined him. And then in the scene, again, spoiler alert, in the scene where he kills Victor, he kills his own brother. Right. You get a little bit more of that, because it's like Victor blames him for being a drug addict, while at the same time, Victor takes none of the blame for bringing him there. He's like the weaker of the two, and he depends on Victor and Victor's love and everything. He loves him. He wants him to love him back. And when Victor, decides to kind of desert him by his own understanding, he just kills him. Yeah. And again, you attribute a lot of that to the drugs and everything. But that's sort of how it played in my head, that I thought it was interesting that my mind went there. That right. It was some sort of a criticism maybe on American culture or on everything that's available in America. All of a sudden, he comes to this land of opportunity, but they get richer, but also, he becomes this drug addict, which is like the, the beginning of the end for him. But yeah.
Well, and I found it, and I still, as much as you don't want to laugh at it, when Victor is telling him that he doesn't need him, he says, "Look at you, you stupido drug addict." And just, he says, "Why don't you try being more like," and Henry Silva's character, he's like you? And he says, "Well, yes, like me, try and be more like me, And then Henry Silva's, obviously I've seen this many times. He's like, I will. I love you. And then they have this like brotherly love exchange. And I remember seeing that, and I said in the theater out loud, and and made many people laugh back when you could say stuff in the theater and get a reaction out of it. When he goes, I love you, and I went, oh, I love you too. And it was just kind of one of those, and now even today I say it in my head when I'm watching the show, when I'm watching the movie. But yeah, I mean,
yeah, there's something definitely sort of over the top about that scene.
Yeah, definitely.
But I find that maybe it works both ways, because it's also a little bit believable. Because when something real like that happens,
it's not,
it looks like that.
It's not believable. It was just it was one of those, it kind of came out of left field kind of thing, or at least his reaction to the wide open mouth, where he'd open his mouth and it was like, in director's terms, a 3 count before he delivered his lines. And I was kind of like, okay, it works. Again, it's not that it's not believable. Yeah. It's just one of those things that you're kind of like, okay, didn't expect that, but all right, moving on.
The Henry Silva character to me is one of my favorites in this movie, because there's something very, very interesting, about him. It's intriguing, and I think that I have a few favorites in this film. And then when I always look at it again, I notice that the ones that are my favorites have maybe too small of a role in this film.
Right.
Because Henry Silva's character doesn't get much up until the end. In that final scene, oh, he's a ghost. Where is he? He's a ghost.
Yeah.
That ghost situation did not exist in the beginning of the film.
Right.
They never mentioned that he's a ghost, just he's an assassin, He's good at his job and all the rest of it. That's it. All of a sudden, he's this ghost. And it was such a great element, but they should have introduced it earlier, I felt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he didn't appear enough in the film, I thought.
In a sense, with the ghost thing, though, if I can interject, the thing with the ghost, the whole thing with the ghost thing, it kind of starts when he first shoots Domino in the doorway.
Well, the other one.
Because after he shoots her, he goes to step into the elevator and he stops, and then he gets out and takes the stairs. And then when Sharky gets up there, and then he goes chasing after him, and he can't find him in the stairwell. That's the only place that he can be, is in this stairwell. And he's disappeared completely and walks out of the building without ever being seen by anybody. So technically they do bring that whole ghost thing in at that point, which is still, it's still only,
but I don't think it's ever
40
mentioned.
minutes into the movie. No, they don't call him a ghost then. But just because then when they go chasing after him towards the end of the film, it's every time they turn a corner, he's not there. And so I get it that they don't use the word ghost, but at the same time, I kind of feel like they kind of, allude to that in that part.
Just at one time, perhaps. Yeah. But not enough for me, because again, it was such a great element.
It's all about you. No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all about me. But he's still, like I said, even with that, he's one of my favorite characters in this. But I do have a list of favorites, and that's, I think, what makes this film. It's the casting choices, as well as the way, I guess, they were written, which was enough to make them so interesting, even though they're not on screen a lot. I mean, another one is Domino herself. I thought Domino should have been in the film more, especially after the love affair with Sharky begins, and then she kind of disappears. And then in the end, they show you that, they're together, look, they lived happily ever after.
Right, right.
And another one is Papa, Brian Keith's character.
Yeah. And
it's so subtle with him, and he's just so likable, but very subtle, because they don't really give you much, but you still, like we talked about before, he's like this old-time detective that, does his job, goes home to a bottle of whiskey, gets up in the morning, does the same thing again. It's never mentioned in the film at any point,
and
but you get that impression.
Absolutely no couth whatsoever.
Yeah, he's too old. He's seen too much to care.
Yep. Yeah.
And another one is actually, I think two more. One is Bernie Casey's character.
Yeah.
Because he's got some of the best lines in the film. Yeah. And again, the look of him, so tall and still he doesn't play it tough, which is a nice touch. Usually they have this, the big guy, like he's going to play it tough. He plays it kind of cheeky.
And the only time he plays it tough is when Charles Durning yells at them to get out of the building towards the beginning of the movie, when Burt Reynolds first gets demoted down to vice, is when he tells Charles Durning says, "Now move it," and he stands up and he stands right in front of Charles Durning, and it's obvious
in his face
that the height is like, feet between the two characters, and all you hear him say is, "I'm moving it, Lieutenant." And you gotta, and then he steps away, and Charles Durning is still looking up as he's walking away. "Don't we have to tell you again?" So,
and that's another nice little bit of subtext, because what Bernie Casey's character essentially is saying, don't push it.
Right.
You sometimes do go over the line. You're very close to it. Don't piss me off.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I like that. And the last one that I want to talk about is it's Nosh. He is, Sharky's friend that he brings into it, and again, just so natural, and he just added a little bit extra to the film, even though he wasn't seen all that much.
Right.
So the supporting cast here is just amazing,
stellar. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things that the introduction of Nosh is just amazing, because they're talking about trying to get, he says, "I can get you six of these bugs, but we can't do 7. Well, why not? Well, this one Domino, she's protected. I know somebody who's buried in personnel who is a favor for me," and they're like, "Bullshit, nobody does Vice any favors." He said, "I'm telling you, he'll do it as a personal favor to me." Cut to Nosh. "Piss off, Sharky." And it's like, that's the introduction. He says, "You ungrateful son of a bitch. Hey, don't you talk to me like that. I'll kick the shit out of you. And then he slams his hand on the table. "Knock you to your knees." And then his wife and his daughter come downstairs.
Yeah, interjects. Yeah, the wife interjects because she knows this is always the way they communicate.
Yep. Yep. Stop
it's nothing
playing
new
high
to her.
School,
She's not phased.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then there's a nice little scene there where Sharky says goodnight to the daughter, and Nosh says to him, "That's
awesome.
It? From over there?" And he comes over and he holds her.
We hugging this family. Come on.
Yeah. And that's another thing that was left out of the film, I thought. After Nosh gets killed, we don't see his wife and daughter anymore. We don't know what happened to them, and what the reaction was, or if they were killed as well. We don't know.
My guess is, I don't know. I think we're going to have to look into getting the book.
I would have to say,
revisit this again. I think they were killed, because when he's talking to when Nosh, is talking to Burt Reynolds on the phone, he says to him, he says, the tapes are gone. I come in, I go home, he says, the tapes are gone from here. And I went home and the tapes are gone from there too. And he says, he says, he tells them, Burt Reynolds tells them, take your wife and take your daughter, get them out of there. And he says, you know, and we'll get this figured out. And that's when Nosh says to him, he says, who's on our side? And to me, that was kind of at that point you knew, because and then you saw the elevator in the back window come up and stop at his floor. And so that
with
was
Henry Silva.
Henry Silva. Yep. So
and we get told later that Nosh got killed, but we never see it. And that was right. In a way a nice touch. But the reason I think that his wife absolutely, and
right.
and the reason I think that the wife and daughter were killed was because when Burt Reynolds comes to the house, the ninjas are waiting for him there. And there's no mention or you know of the wife and daughter. So obviously they didn't get out because Nosh didn't get out.
Right.
And I think they may have even shot this somehow, but decided it's too dark and left it out.
I kind of thought the same thing, that they decided to leave it out. Because, I mean, back then you couldn't show the kind of stuff that they show in movies now. I mean, you could, but it was, you know, Herschel Gordon movies and you know, the splatter films kind of situation. But
they didn't even have to show it. They just could have told us in a way, and then
right.
And then have Sharky even more, you know, enraged and vengeful, which he kind of wasn't. So I think that's why, you know what I mean? We never saw that rage from him, and we probably would have or should have if the wife and daughter were killed as well.
Right. Well, and it was like when they were on the boat, when Smiley was that's somebody else. I mean, his character, Daryl Hickman's character, Smiley, is he's only in the movie 5 times. I think total. The first time was when he blows the drug deal at the beginning, and then the next time he's apologizing to Sharky and the police officer.
It goes down to Vice.
That is like the most epic thing. He says, "Hey Shark, look, man, I'm sorry. You know, what can I do? Have a heart attack." And then Joseph Mascalo comes in. Yeah, have 2, Smiley, you bimbo.
But you didn't find that odd? That Smiley was the one who ruined that whole drug bust.
No,
it's not. And Sharky gets blamed for it.
Well, and it's not that I found it odd. It was just I was just making the point about the character himself. And no,
I'm asking if you found it odd. You know, it's just when I saw the film, I was like, he should get some of the blame. He should be demoted as well, or whatever. He really, screwed up.
Well, but I think because of who he was and his status. I mean, obviously he was high up. He was in the top 5 of Victor's little group. You know.
Yeah, so, he was. Yeah.
So it was.
He was the mole, I guess.
I got it. He was the mole. So I got it when we saw him in the limousine when he dropped off Victor at Domino's place, and so yeah, but he's got some of the better lines, and again, the part out on the boat, you know, was just really. It was a lot of, it was another one of those characters that's not in it very much, but when he was, he did the damage, you know. It's kind of like
he was slimy, that guy. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. It's just, well, and when he said your pal Jojo, he's going to that big police station in the sky. And then Burt and Sharky like jumps up at him, and he's No, he doesn't jump at him yet. And he goes, and
because he says
he says
Nosh
Jojo.
and Jojo.
Yeah, he says, your pal Jojo is going to that big police station in the sky. And he goes, and Nosh is going there too. And that's when he jumps up and tries to, when you went to see the man, you really pissed him off. You should have just handed over the girl, but here we are. And so, yeah, and he had some really good dialogue. It's just some,
he did.
What you're going to do is you're going to lean in, whisper in my ear where the girl is, and we'll bring the chins in here, and it'll all be over really quick and painless. So
it was very quick. He was right.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know about painless. I don't know if it was painless, but it was quick.
Well, and something else I think we should probably talk about is the lack of, and here's the thing, I am the least political correct person on the planet ever. And I
yeah.
To this day, I still, I am not a fan of political correctness in any way, shape, or form. This movie was anything but politically correct, at least in sections of it, because there are well, again, it's the time. You know, we were talking about this, and it's the kind of stuff that we grew up with, and a lot of the what would be considered now, you know, the Twitter crowd would just have a conniption over, was some of the anti, I guess I'm not even call it anti, it was just racial slurs against Asians, against, you know, blacks.
Yeah.
And well,
women,
but the racial slurs from the blacks was not from anybody in the main cast. It didn't come out of Burt Reynolds' mouth, didn't come out of Bertie Casey's mouth. It came out of like the bad guys that they were going after, you know. It's like they use the N-word at the very beginning, but it comes from the black drug dealer, you know. Don't try to talk like a... Go ahead.
That scene between Domino and Sharky, you know, where she slaps him and then he slaps her back. It was very Clark Gable, you know, old school. You know, I was actually watching this film with my girlfriend, and she was kind of surprised by that scene. Like, what's happened? Why is he so angry at her? And I said, well, because he fell for her, and he is conflicted over this thing that she is this prostitute. She belonged to this criminal and this politician, and she slept with them for money, for favors, for whatever, however you want to
for a house,
you know, describe it. Yeah, exactly. For a lifestyle, for a lifestyle. And she kept saying, you know, I'm a dancer, and it's like,
she's a dancer.
I was explaining, you know, that. The way he was acting was because of that, because he was in love with her and he didn't know how to, you know, how to settle both those feelings, because he judged her as well as was in love with her. And then, you know, when the violence thing comes in, and I was like, well, it's kind of a product of its time. Today, that kind of scene wouldn't stand for, especially for a character who's this. He's not an anti-hero, you know. He should have probably been more of an anti-hero, but he wasn't. He was just the hero. He's the good guy. He does what he's done. And then when he slaps her, I was like, okay, it's a product of its time. I'm not gonna, you know, go there. And the whole, you know, the different parts of the movie are, you know, have those moments where you didn't even think about it. In fact, it was comedy, and there were things that were said that were funny in the theater. And, you know, when I hear them now, to me, I've seen the movie so many times, it's just, I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, it's so politically incorrect. You laugh at it because that's what you did when you saw it. You know, when I saw it the first 8 times in the theater, again, some of those lines were, when they were delivered, and then most of them were from Brian Keith, were, you know, just, you know, the fact that you heard some of that coming out of
his mouth of all people because of the TV show that we grew up on with him in it. It was like, whoa, did Brian Keith just say that? Did he just like, when they're talking about the Chinese food, when he's talking about it with Bernie Casey, and he goes, hey, you want to like go get something to eat after we're done here? Go grab a burger, pizza or something. And he says, he says, people eat too much. I forget that's one of the parts. He says, we take too much for granted when it comes to our food. And he goes, and he said, you're going to sit there and, so what do you want to eat? You want to eat some of that? You're going to eat some of that Jap shit, that raw shit? Do you ever see a Jap that's over 4 foot tall? What does it do for them? and Bernie Casey is looking through his binoculars. Yeah. And he looks and he kind of looks at him and he goes, it's metaphysical, man. He says, metaphysical? Are you kidding me? Eating food with friggin' worms in it? And because sushi wasn't a thing yet. It back then it existed, but it only existed for maybe people that had money back then. So when he's talking about sushi, that raw shit, that's what he's talking about is the fact that it's sushi, but nobody knew what it was at that time. In fact, sushi didn't even come into the national consciousness until it was mentioned in The Breakfast Club, which we have talked about. And recently, even then we didn't know what it was because the rich girl had it, outside of the fact that you had raw fish sitting in a bag unrefrigerated for 4 hours before she ate it. Think about that one.
Yummy. But
that's
what would you what for you? Let's talk about the comedy part of this film. What was the funniest favorite funny part for you in this film?
Oh God,
it doesn't have to be outwardly funny, just what amused you, let's say.
I laugh at so much in that movie. I think one of my favorite parts is that part where they kick Burt Reynolds out of the car to go arrest Mabel, the prostitute. That where he gets almost hazed, kind of. Yeah. That part is probably one of my favorite. The next one would be the conversation between him and Nosh. It's just the editing. I'm telling you, he'll do it as a personal favor to me. Piss off, Sharky. So it's literally a cut to Nosh's close up in here.
Yeah.
And it's the timing of it is perfect. The cut, the edit is perfect, and it just, it jumps right in. Another one is when Bernie Casey goes to see Kitten Holmes, a drug dealer informant of his. And when they're standing, they go outside, he goes, give me a name. I want a goddamn name. And he goes, I'm telling you, man, I don't know who it is. And Bernie Casey's going, they're having a back and forth, and Bernie Casey grabs him and puts him over the edge of this. They're on the second story of this building, and they're out on the balcony, and he puts him over the edge, and he says, what does he say to him? He says, you better give me a fucking name. And he goes, oh, bullshit. You ain't going to throw me over this shit. Oh, you don't think so? No, I don't think you will. And he grabs him by the belt and throws him over the edge. And it's just like, I don't know if it's just because of the delivery of the dialogue, but it's hysterical, okay, so he's resorted to violence for some comedy, but that's another one of my favorite parts. Another
that
one
part, I just have to say about that part where he throws him over the balcony. It reminded me. I didn't remember it from having watched it, the last time I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
But straight away, it took me to Commando, Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
He said, "You'll kill me last." I lied.
I lied.
And I was like,
yep.
they kind of borrowed that from here, or maybe it was done before this. I don't know, but because Commando came later.
Right.
But yeah, it is funny. And Schwarzenegger just took it like another step up and made it probably more obviously funny as well, but also more serious.
Right.
Yeah.
And then another part, which was one line, is when after Victor is killed by the brother, by Henry Silva's character, they're in there and the I guess the butler, this big,
he's like the chef or something,
the chef or something, but he's this big. I don't know if he was Hispanic or if he was Asian, but he's this big bald dude.
You know what he was. You know what he was according to the name he gave them when they asked him for his name.
Oh, Mongo. Yeah, he says, "What's your name?"
It's like Mongolian.
Right. So, and when Brian Keith takes the nightstick and he puts it between his legs and he lifts the dude up by his nuts, he goes, "Come here, Mongo," and he's like, "Oh!" And just that quick little thing, that's another part to me that is just absolutely hysterical. I just love that part, there's so many good funny things at the beginning when they're chasing the junk man, and he gets him on the bus and he blows him away on the bus, and then he hits the door opener on the bus and he falls out onto the street. That in the theater was a laugh. That was a laugh followed by some applause. It's like, yay, they killed the bad guy kind of thing. But then
it was actually a smart move to get him away from the people in case he can still get a shot off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I just thought, and then when the two cops have got their guns on him, and the one cop goes, "Is that junk man?" And Reynolds says, "Yeah." And the other cop goes, "Is he dead?" And he looks at him, he goes, "Why don't you shake him and see if he comes around? Is he dead?" Really? He just shot him 6 times. Is he dead?
Well, they don't know that. They just came out of nowhere, those two. They were chasing.
Yeah. It was just hilarious. That's just another.
That was a very
one of those things.
A very Dirty Harry scene. That one.
Very much. Very much.
Yeah, and I got that impression that.
Well, he even had the 44.
Film,
he had the 44 and the sound effects from the 44, the Dirty Harry sound effects.
But when I saw the film the first time, I was like, okay, this is going to be a Dirty Harry inspired in a way character. So I expected him to be more anti-hero and darker than it actually was. Even though the film is dark, I still expected it to be darker, I think.
Yeah.
But to me, the funniest bit that made me the most entertained, I guess, is actually a lot more subtle, and I think it was probably improvised to an extent. And that's after Bernie Casey gets shot. Sharky, and he comes over. Make sure he's dead. Sharky. And by the end of it, every time Burt Reynolds starts to go after Henry Silva, he calls him back and says something else, And at the end, he says Sharky, and Sharky's gone. And I thought that was hilarious. And I thought it was improvised as well.
Oh, I'm pretty. There's no that kind of exchange like that. I don't think could ever be written. It has to be. It has to be.
Yeah.
But then
also,
then the last, and then the last thing he says is Sharky when he doesn't come back. I think you ruined my shirt.
A perfectly good jacket. I think I ruined a perfectly good jacket.
Yeah, I think he ruined a perfectly good jacket. So, so yeah,
Actually,
it's just
that last I guess chase and shootout sort of exchange with Henry Silva and the three of
mhm.
them, Papa and Bertie Casey and Smokey, to me is one of the most memorable parts of the film for various reasons. Again with Papa, they didn't show him getting shot. They just showed
No,
him, and the way they placed him on the rail, I thought was brilliant.
yeah, slumped over in the stairwell.
Yeah, and you kind of there was blood on the door, so you kind of know he got a couple of shots off and actually hit Henry Silva. And then with Bernie Casey, he gets shot another like 4 times at least and doesn't
Yeah,
drop.
well,
And
he's
and
so
there they
wired up on
really,
whatever.
yeah, and they really amped up the because before he got shot by Papa and he got shot by Sharky
Hmm.
in the chase, and they really amped up the ghost, that
Yeah,
character. It's like, yeah,
yeah,
he's on drugs and that's what's keeping him alive. But
right.
but wow, and that final scene, where he tries to off himself just not to give Sharky the satisfaction, and Sharky just empties his gun at him. That was just
Yeah,
brilliant. And that
yeah.
fall, apparently that
That
was one of the highest or longest or whatever fall shot on film
that's
at that stage.
I think it's still in the
Up
top
there,
three. It's in the top
yeah,
three.
because
Donna Robinson did the jump out of the building.
apparently for when he falls out the window, that was the stuntman. What we see from a distance, that is a doll, but
Yeah,
but it looked so
yeah,
real. I was actually
yeah,
I said to my girlfriend as watching it, I'm like, wow, that was really good, because whatever that prop doll was, they actually weighted it like a person.
yeah,
So it was,
yeah.
you could, when it was dropping, it wasn't like flailing about like other dolls, in the wind where you could tell it's not a
Right,
person. It
right,
was just,
right.
wow, that looked really good.
Yeah,
So that was
yeah.
great, great scene, just very, very memorable. And then I hated that final scene that, where they show you Sharky and Domino and he's pushing her on the swing. I was like, oh, yeah.
Well, why you hated that? You just hated it because you weren't the one pushing her on the swing?
I hated it because I thought it was a bit simplistic, and they should have like look at that happy ending, I'm like, oh, make it a bit more subtle, please. You made
Well,
so many other things were subtle about this film. We didn't need to see it like that.
yeah, but come on. I mean, the guy lost his fingers, and you know,
Let him push her on the swing. She should be
lost all
pushing
of
him on the
his
swing.
lost his entire machine behind him. I mean, everybody died, and you know, give him a little
But I
something.
guess now that you mentioned that, we can go back to talking about Rachel Ward a bit more, because we really should.
La, 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 la.
Again, she was a model at the time,
Mm,
and just gorgeous, and I think she was. Somebody sent a magazine or something to Burt Reynolds to have a look at her, and that magazine, I think she was. They called her the face of the '80s. So they were expecting her to become this mega star,
mm-hmm.
which she didn't. She did make a few big films. I think the biggest one was Against All Odds, with Jeff Bridges.
Right.
But and James Woods, who was very good in it.
Mm-hmm.
But she never got mega huge, and I think that may have been by choice. I think she wanted to step away, from the limelight.
Well, she
Married
got
Brian Brown, and.
well, and she did. She spent over a year shooting the Thornbirds, and
Yeah, because that was a
I
massive
know
miniseries. That one. Yeah.
that took a lot out of her. I know. I read, and it was kind of one of those things that she wanted to take a break, but since she was still kind of on a roll, and when they talked to her about Against All Odds, she did The Final Terror, which is kind of a kind of a pseudo horror movie, but it's she did that, and then and then they got her in for Against All Odds, and because of the people attached to that, she was like, okay, fine, let's go ahead and do that. But after she did Against All Odds, again, it's just like you said, she kind of dropped out, at least from the American eye. She did a lot of stuff in Australia, excuse me, but
because she was born in England, I think, but I think she spent a lot of her life here in Australia.
Yeah,
maybe it was after marrying Brian Brown, maybe before, I'm not sure.
I think it was after she married Brian Brown that she spent a lot of time.
They got married in like early 80s.
Well, they met on the Thornbirds. Is where they
makes sense, because they got married that year, I think. I think it was actually on I remember that being on the news. And they're still married.
Yeah.
Which
probably
is
because they stayed out of the limelight.
Yeah, I mean, he drifted in and out of it. He sort of came back sometime in the 2000s. I can't remember exactly when, but films like Along Came Polly, where he did this like he was doing like a supporting character thing, and sorry, no, that that was him. Yep, he's this crazy Aussie guy in it. But he did a bit of those kinds of roles because he was a big star, in sort of 80s and 90s, probably 90s.
Well, he really blew up when he did FX, and then from that he got Cocktail, and because Cocktail was so huge, and you know what's funny? Yeah. He's my favorite part of Cocktail. He is. Yeah. I mean, that's probably a conversation for another day, but I just really enjoyed his character in Cocktail because it just felt like the realism of this guy who wanted the world and continually failed miserably
but found his place,
trying to get it. Well, found his place, which was not exactly a place, and then offed himself because he just didn't feel like he was good enough. So anyway, I like that was one of my favorite characters that he did, aside from, both of the effects movies were really good.
There's something about Brian Brown that's just very, very Australian. If like the sort of stereotypical, Australian kind of alpha male, but and they do have that sort of cheeky side to them, which he does as well.
Right.
But Rachel Ward, like they got married, and I think had 3 kids, and she's still sort of, in and out of. She directs here and there, mainly. Right. Episodes on TV series and stuff, a film every now and again. So she's still in the field. I just don't think she wanted to be, Hollywood, and she didn't want to be this big star, which she could have been.
Yeah, but at the same time, she could have got pigeonholed too if she hadn't maybe stepped out.
Had range.
She did have range, but as we know, range doesn't mean anything. If you don't, if Hollywood doesn't use you for anything else except, so, she could have probably gotten called for a whole ton of movies, but then at the same time, she could have been like, no, I'm not doing that. No, not going to do that. Not going to do that.
I would assume that that's what happened. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised. Because when I saw her, like her acting skill and her look, she could have easily been a maybe more serious, and I mean as far as the roles,
Mm-hmm.
as like a Julia Roberts. You know, she had that going for her, and
Yeah.
and I thought she would become this massive star. I think that her not becoming that big was by design, her own, I mean.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
kudos to her, you know, for making a choice and sticking with it, if that's the case. And if not, oh my God, then she would have been just wasted potential, because
Right.
one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen, and the personality comes through, and she had that in spades.
Yes. Yep.
And yeah, I just thought she was just such a classy person and actress, and yeah, I was definitely jealous of Brian Brown for a long, long time.
Well, and I think one of the last things that we should talk about with this film is the music. The music, there was a lot of jazz music in it, and that most of that music, why don't we just call this the score versus the songs, because there were a handful of songs that were in there, but the score was done by none other than Johnny Carson's very own Doc Severinsen. So he did all of the score parts of the film. You know, there was a lot of jazz type music in this, and it was kind of one of those things where you didn't expect it, and you know, even from the title song, "Street Life," done by who was that? Randy.
Well, Randy Crawford was the lead singer.
Randy Crawford
of the band. Yeah, it just escapes me now, but yeah.
Yeah. So you start off with that, you know, that clarinet at the very beginning, you know, and then you see this red that looks like a red cylinder in the middle of the screen, and then it dissolves into this building in Atlanta that you look and you go, oh wow, okay, that's a building. That's pretty cool. And it wasn't like this huge special effect or anything, but it's from the first note of the beginning of the film all the way through, the music is just, there is nothing about it that you sit there and go, oh, that was kind of dumb, or that was kind of dumb. And all of the music is just amazing. And then the songs, there's not very many songs in the movie. I would probably say there's only maybe 3 or 4 at the tops. You do have Street Life. You do have, they have My Funny Valentine is sung in it.
2 versions, I think, of My Funny Valentine.
Hold on. Let me.
There's one, the original.
Let me grab the soundtrack, the original soundtrack of.
Well, what's the name of the band, Streetlight?
It's just Randy Crawford on the back of the album.
Yeah, she was credited, but I saw this. I'll tell you in a second. But
yeah, they have a lot of different groups. Route 66 was playing when they were.
It's the Crusaders. The Crusaders was the band.
Is that the band?
Yeah, and Randy Crawford is their vocalist, and she was credited, but it was actually by the band. Okay. And I think we were talking about this just before recording. That song was used in Jackie Brown by Tarantino as well.
Okay. Do we know where it was used, though? I'm still trying to figure
I can't remember. I just read it. Let me see if it says anything about that. The version the version that we get here is actually a faster one.
Yeah.
It's got like this full orchestra.
Well, and this was the same one too. It's different on the album.
It's the same version that Tarantino used. Yeah. But such a great song. It's like it's almost like a disco, you know.
Yeah.
Type of song.
But it's got that jazz influence behind it, which is really which is really cool. So yeah, I mean, they had Doc Severinsen, Manhattan Transfer,
reminiscent. Yeah, they did Route 66, right?
Yep. That was playing.
Yep.
In fact, Route 66 was playing when they were installing the bugs in Domino's in her apartment. So,
and Chet Baker's "My Funny Valentine" was used, which is the original, I believe. And they also had a different one,
Julie London,
by someone. Julie London.
Yeah,
that's the one.
Julie London. So,
because that song has been remade many times,
100 times. Yeah.
The Sarah Vaughan did the love theme from Sharky's Machine. That was also a big one. And
well, it's just
Sharky's
cool.
theme was also not by
Eddie Harris. Eddie Harris
That's
did
the
that
one.
one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So,
it's kind of a varied soundtrack.
What's really cool is if you go inside the cover of this, and maybe I'll look online and see if I can put. But I mean, it's just the pictures of all of them, of the recording, and here, do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like
I used to love looking through album covers and stuff.
Yeah, Doc Severinsen is right there, but yeah, it's just really cool.
As well.
Yeah. So it's just, and the crazy thing about it is, because now I'm going to be a record guy, but this album, I don't know, it is immaculate. It is absolutely immaculate. I mean, I don't know if this thing has ever been played more than once. Yep.
Oh, okay, that's good. So you must have bought it from someone who was a collector and took good care of it.
And I paid $5.99 for it.
Because I have to say, the even the cover looks like it's in really good condition.
The cover is in pretty good shape. Minus, I mean, there's some regular wear and tear on it, and it's still got the little Warner Brothers alarm emblem
and the gorgeous Rachel Ward right there.
Yeah, there she is.
Damn.
Yeah.
And that mustache, I have to say, on Burt Reynolds.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
The man and the mustache.
So yeah, the music.
I was second only to Tom Selleck's mustache.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I've seen Tom Selleck without a mustache, and I kind of feel like
I've seen Burt Reynolds without a mustache.
Yeah.
Remember in Deliverance, I was like, "What the hell? Where's the mustache?
Yeah, where's the mustache, dude? Seriously?
Where'd it go?"
So,
but there was one part in the film that the soundtrack kind of bothered me, and I think it was around that scene where they find Victor's body, and it goes into this jazzy, almost Pink Panther-y kind of vibe, and I was like, "Why is that there? That didn't belong." But it was probably because they moved it into that comedy part that you were talking about with Mongo. So yeah, but that was one bit that I didn't love, but the rest of it, just great.
Yeah, everything about the music was just awesome, and actually, I found out that if you go on YouTube Music, somebody had put a playlist together of all the music from the movie. Excuse me, the music from the movie. So, huh?
Of course they did. I'm saying today you find anything you want on YouTube. Yeah.
So if you're not lucky enough to own the record, as I am, and I do have a record player, I just my wife found one that somebody gave to us.
Show off.
Yeah.
Just a cough. I still have a cold.
What?
I still have a cold.
Okay.
It's just my cough.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I mean, go check out the playlist of the music, because it's pretty amazing. The soundtrack is pretty crazy. They do have a copy of Sharky's Machine on Kindle, and it's free. So if you ever wanted to read that, I think my wife has a Kindle. I think I'm gonna buckle down and just get it, have her download it, and just read it for the heck of reading it. Since I had never read the book.
I'll keep my eye out for the book. I don't do Kindle. I just can't. It's too much for me. My eyes just.
Excuse me.
I like a book. No, it's just I think it's from reading scripts. You know.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Much reading off a screen for me. I wouldn't read a full book that way. But I might get it like an audio book and try that for the first time. I've never done that.
Yeah. I'll look and see if they have one of those. I actually would probably do that better. So. All right. Yeah. Well, there you go. There's our opinion and our take on the movie Sharky's Machine, starring Burt Reynolds and directed by Burt Reynolds. So I
was just going to say, as if people couldn't tell, but we both definitely think that this film should be talked about a lot more than it is. You know, it's one of those almost not fully forgotten, but slightly forgotten classics.
Yeah.
Definitely worth seeing if you know any of our audience has not seen it yet. Highly recommend it.
Yep. Go take a look at it. Go watch it now because it's on Amazon Prime. So go watch it now because Itai said so. And so did I.
I do say so.
Yeah. So
and what I say goes.
Yep. All the time. Every time. So if y'all want us to, if you have a movie or something you want us to talk about, or if you are a filmmaker out there of the indie persuasion and like to contact us and be on our show, we'd love to have you on. Just feel free to send us an email at the email address below. It's right. It should be right.
Where is it? Where is it?
Yeah, it's right there. You can contact us and leave us your contact information. We'll get a hold of you. We normally record on like Thursday nights, so keep your Thursday nights open, ladies and gentlemen. And Thursdays also happens to be the day.
U.S. time.
Okay,
let's just say U.S. time. If you
U.S. time.
If you're in Europe, it's Friday morning. If you're in Australia, it's Friday late morning, early afternoon.
So check out our YouTube page and make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos with your friends, families, your moms, your dads, your dogs, your cats, your aunts, your uncles, whoever you want to share the show with. And anything else you'd like to say, Mr. Itai, before we send our watchers on their way?
No, I'm good. I'm almost talked out. But yeah, thank you for watching, whoever's watching. So yeah. No, this was a fun one. Love this movie.
Yeah, love this movie. Go check it out. Sharky's Machine, starring Burt Reynolds. Thanks again for joining us on the Straight Shooter Show. We will see you next time right here. Same bat time, same bat channel. Thanks again for watching.
We'll be back.